This is the Universal class fighter. So this is a early war kind of design to mid-war design that fought throughout the rest of the war and is so this is the actual competent fighter that you would see in large numbers, generally used for general use, such as patrols and. But the most notable ones are the V1 and the V2. Those were the mass-produced. All the others were kind of experimental. The V1 was pretty simplistic. It's not the one we're looking at here, but the V1 was it essentially just had the two engines and the guns, and that was it. It was decently high speed and decently maneuverable, but wasn't well protected or anything like that. When wasn't really well protected when compared to the Splinter. It just had a bit more HP. This was also the first ship that I implemented the successive fire function. So if you get into the ship and hold down the fire button, the guns won't go pew pew pew. Instead, these guns are set up to fire one after each other.
Oh, how'd you pull that
But
off?
yeah, it's pretty simple. You just take the fire primary, take like 4 or 3 of the timer buttons. You attach the fire primary to the timer buttons. You set a certain time between the timers, and then you attach every timer to a gun, and you get the successive firing.
Oh.
The only downside to it is because the guns are attached to the timers, it doesn't recognize the guns your primary weapons. Because of that, you can't aim the guns. If you want to aim the guns, you have to aim the entire ship. There's a notable downside.
Okay, so there's no gimbal on the ship at that point.
Yeah, no gimbal. The V2 was a upgrade in almost every way. It had, for one, fire faster weapons. As you could see, the weapons have cooling attachments, which was an improvement over the V1. The V1 has range attachments, which don't allow it to fire as fast. And so I took those off. I increased the fire rate. That made it increase heat, so it's got those cooling attachments on it. Slightly faster. Not too faster, but slightly faster. The cockpit has also been redesigned. It's a bit more sleek and a bit more simplistic. But most notably, this ship has both shields and a warp drive. In the experimental versions after the V1, the Federation experimented with adding shields and warp drives, but never mass-produced them until the V2, which then has both one shield block and one warp drive. But the one shield block doesn't allow it to have a shield. It only has 2,000 shields, so the shields are practically get hit once or twice and down. They're not really used to keep the ship from taking damage. The point is more of a early warning. In the previous V1, if you got shot, you got hit, you took damage, and you had to evade with that damage. With the shields, you can get hit, know you're getting shot, take evasive actions, and prevent yourself from getting hit again. That's the idea. The V2 would completely replace the V1 and would serve till the end of the war. Later on, would serve in Federation remnants and in rebellion forces. But that's pretty much the story for the V1. But it is continued in the heavy fighting.
And what's this thing?
This is one of Major Car's ships. When it comes to Major Car's designs, they are, of course, obviously very different from mine. And so, I mean, I don't think we have an official explanation for this, but if I had to go with one number of them are earlier pre-war designs, and they're built by other factories.
All right, let's hit this thing up then.
Yes, so this is the Federational light drop ship. There was supposed to be a heavier version, but I didn't build it. It was essentially just a bit wider, but it was too big to fit into anything, and so I just went with this one. The idea for this is when I was building the RMS, when I was imagining how Federation invasions work, is similar to their cargo. unlike using like big drop ships that have like in the Clone Wars, like the and the ship that comes down and carries the troops itself. This
Yeah.
carries like a troop transport, which will then drop, and the troop transport will open the troops will come from. That can also carry, you know, vehicles and such. The turrets on it, the turrets on the side, they can move with the player where they look, so you can use it for fire support and such. It has landing gear, which is nice. Um, it is also
Nice.
like cruise capable, so you can transport things long distance. But this thing is mostly intended to be used in numbers in invasions.
How about this one? This one was fun to fly
This
around in and
ship,
shoot.
yes, this ship was a ship I built after the Federational shuttle. It was based off the design principles I had when building the Federational shuttle, but um, I saw Made to Cars, I think it's called Scythe Bomber, whatever, has that like one big gun on it. And I essentially wanted to create a Federational counterpart to that. And so I ended up building this. Um, it doesn't, in, as far as the lore is concerned, it didn't see wide service. It was mostly just an experimental ship that was built and tested and never went anywhere due to the fact that the Federation just wanted to stick with its lighter strike craft instead of big, strong ones.
Speaking of lighter strike craft, let's hit up the smallest of the strike craft here.
Yeah. So this right here is this is the Splinter class. We do have a V2 to this, but we don't have it in here yet. The Splinter class is essentially the fighter of the Federation. At least it has been for most of the time. This was used pre-war and in the war and to the end of the war. It's light, it's fast, maneuverable, and it's very easy to destroy. More importantly, it's compact and you can fit it into smaller, tight spaces. Um, the ship itself, when I was building it, this is based off a fighter in that universe that was also based off the Geonosian fighter from Star Wars, as you might be able to guess. But
Yeah,
the
I see
idea
it.
is this one has more visibility and such, something that you'll see a lot in Federational battles. So, this is the Federational shuttle. This is one of the earlier, smaller ships that I built for the Federation. As the name implies, it's basically just a shuttle. It has average speed, average maneuverability. It doesn't have the strongest of shields, and that's because I built it before I knew how to use capacitors. So I didn't add those onto the shields, otherwise they have stronger shields. The front ramp opens up and closes, and it has those two Gatling guns for defense. But overall, it's just a shuttle. This is the Federation Heavy Fighter V1. I think this might be the V2. Yeah, the only way to tell is the weapons. Yeah, this is this a V1 or a V2? You have to look at the front weapons. Yeah, this is a V1. So this fighter was specifically meant to combat the Federation's heavy, or the Imperial heavy fighter, which I don't think you covered in the video, but you'll probably cover it eventually. The main reason I built it wasn't for lore reasons, it's actually because I got into a multiplayer game with Major Car. He pulled out the heavy fighter, I pulled a universal fighter, started shooting him, and he beat my ass with no problem. So I started building fighters to combat that ship. Because the Imperial heavy fighter was kind of rare, these ships are also kind of rare, but these are the most common version. The V1 has decent speed, has shields, has a warp drive. I think it's faster than the Universal Fighter. It's also more durable, of course, but it has more firepower. The V1 has 8 sequential or whatever firing guns compared to the Universal's 4. And the V1 also has 4 more in the front that have Gatling barrels, and the idea was that would be for close range or close up engagements. And yeah, but I later found out that those weapons are actually pointless because the thing goes so fast that you can't stay behind someone to get close range engagements. So in the V1.5, the Gatling guns were replaced with regular barrels, and instead it just has slower firing but more accurate and more powerful shots. If you want to get in it, you can see how fast this thing fires compared to the Universal.
Holy crap.
Exactly. Uh, However, due to the fact that they fire in this way, they do have the same problem that the Universal has, where they're not on a gimbal, so you have to be a ship. And so, as far as lore is concerned, this thing was still used in numbers and was more of a upgrade to the Universal Fighter. Essentially, like if you were a really good pilot, like an ace in the Universal Fighter, then you were awarded with one of these. But due to the fact that I still couldn't beat the Imperial Heavy Fighter with these things, I then went on and designed the V2, which is the one you assumed was the Heavy Fighter. This has an obvious difference in between. So the V2 was built because, of course, I couldn't beat the Heavy Fighter, the Imperial Heavy Fighter, the V1 Federation Heavy Fighter. So I built this one. Noticeably bigger. I think it's faster, but I'm not sure. It's just as maneuverable and has more punch with its firepower. The problem I ran into is with the Imperial Heavy Fighters, it doesn't fire as fast, but it fires its guns. Its guns are much more powerful with every hit. So the idea is, instead of firing a lot of damage over time, you fire that one or two couple shots that do much more damage. However, as far as lore is concerned, this is just an experimental. It was never put into mass production. There is a Heavy Fighter V3 that I built, but it is also completely experimental. I haven't released it on the workshop. It looks like a tick. It does. Yeah, so this is this isn't a official Federation ship. This is a corporation built ship. This is the GCS Heavy Fighter. The GCS fighters GCS is, of course, owned by or is a independent corporation, but it makes fighters for the Federation. The Federation usually doesn't use private fighters built by private companies. It uses its own inbuilt ships, which is what all these ships are. But for smaller use, such as debt collection and such, because it's a policing force that does that, and other bureaus of the Federation that aren't specifically military, it does purchase outside ships for that use, and this would be one of these. But most notably with this thing is I made up a paint job for the or markings for the Federational markings. Those markings on the other side of the ship, the three little circles, are a concept for the Federational insignia, and those markings are, of course, kill marks. This ship itself, as I said, it's mostly for speed with that big engine, and has decent maneuverability, has decent firepower. This is one of the first ships that I started using the fire secondary, fire primary, because I wanted the guns to be able to gimbal.
All right. Well, I think we're down to the lady of the fleet here.
Yes, the lady of the fleet. This is my masterpiece, the Autumn Mist.
Please join us next time when we'll go over the Autumn Mist. Thank you for watching. Peace.